Little Primer is back-to-back conversations with someone passionate about their work and passionate about someone else's work. Mostly art and mostly Atlanta. I'm your host, Sean Mills.
Sir Ian McKellen, who played Gandalf, he had like this famous meltdown where he was faced with the fact that he was using green screen and there wasn't anyone in front of him, and broke down and was like, this isn't acting, like maybe I just need to retire. And then they had to, like, you know, bring him shields to look at and, like, hug him and say, like,
talk
you know,
off the ledge.
We're with you, buddy. Well, just recently, this movie, Alita Battle Angel, directed by Robert Rodriguez, came out. And I thought this was an interesting counterpoint that the actress Rosa Salazar, she says, green screen acting is the first time I really felt free. Like, it's the only free acting. So, like, if you were a good actor, you knew how to hit your marks, you knew how to, like, hold your body so the lighting hit you right, you knew how to do it over and over again so that other people could act with you, and the lighting guy knew how to light you. And with green screens, the interesting thing is that it's all in post, in a sense. So she was saying, you know, I can put my hands anywhere, they'll be able to pick it up. I can walk anywhere. I can look anywhere. In the past, like, I'd have to be, like, thinking about how they were seeing me, and now I can just act. So whether that's true or not, like, they probably both have good points, but I just thought that was an interesting, maybe, bellwether moment, and, like, we're seeing a paradigm shift.
It's interesting because they're coming at it from, you know, obviously she's young, he's older.
Yeah,
and
different generations, right?
And they see the technology differently, but
right.
For him, acting, you know, he's done stage and theater, and it's about the interaction between characters. And for this young woman, it's more about expressing herself. So I could see where she would come from that.
Now she doesn't have to wear a suit because, like, they're putting the suit in. So that used to be a thing, that it's like you'd have to wait, like, wearing, like, a Victorian dress would be heavy, and that would change, like, your body movement. Whereas, like, now if they're going to animate that could make it easier.
Yeah, but at the same time, wearing a heavy woolen dress affects you physically, and that makes it more true. It's more true to that character.
More
accurate. That's that is the limitation that character they're portraying would have been under. So, you know, there's a lot to that. But I'll tell you, you know, you said green screen, and it's just kind of interesting to me that, I mean, I was just out on the show Doom Patrol, which is a new DC streaming show. It was super heavy effects kind of thing. But they've actually gone the other way with the aesthetic. And one of the things their reviews have been about is the fact that they are using practical effects. So a lot of, like, Robot Man is actual physical suit he's wearing. Cyborg's wearing a, you know, prosthetic thing over his eye that's actual physical, you know, on-camera object. But at the same time, I just did a scene with a guy who has I'm not allowed to say too much, but he's got a separate head and a different appendage, and they weren't there. And the effects guys, basically, there's a young lady with she's measuring my camera height and lens and focus and all that, and they just, whatever, there's no green screen involved. They just stick it in there. You know, it's the technology's moved beyond even green screen. And even green screen's an old term. We don't use green that often. We use blue a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's more blue screens than green screens, and there was a reason for the green originally in the way video cameras picked up colors.
Yeah.
It's a long technical thing I'm not going to get into, but with the digital technology, it could be any color. You could do pink.
Yeah, totally.
So it became more about what bounces back onto the set, and so green's kind of, you know, unpleasant in most cases. So now they typically use weird blues that, you know, don't normally appear. So, and then, like I said, even now, it's so often, I did a camera test for a show called Mr. Robot. They're going to be out doing apparently they have an episode coming up where it's a lot of car driving through the city of New York. And it's gotten cost prohibitive to drive and a trailer and cameras and lighting and close off streets at night in New York City. So what they were going to do was do green screen, like you suggested. So they shoot the actors on a green screen in a car, and then they send cameras out to shoot the background plates. But there's a new technology now where they shoot the background plates first, they put them on these giant LED screens around a car on a stage, and they're synced to the camera and everything. So all the screens are synced. So as the people drive, the video moves.
Wow.
So you get reflections in the glass. You see the lighting from the scene affecting the actors, and it's super realistic. And they came to test that technique.
And how big are those? Those are giant screens?
They
Like billboards or something?
They can be that big, yeah. The ones we were testing were only maybe 30 feet wide, but they can go huge.
That seems related to the James Cameron technology, like he shoots the special effects in camera, like with the avatar movement, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's along those lines, and what that lets them do is the actors as they're driving, they can realistically react to the turn coming up because they see it; it's in front of them.
Right.
And to the camera, it's all they don't.
It feels like VR to them a little. Not VR.
It kind of is
like an AR VR, right?
It kind of is.
Wow.
It's a neat technology, and there's a company in Atlanta that is like sort of the leader in that. And so, Mr. Robot crew came, the director, the DP, and effects guy came down, and I did camera tests with him there to look at that. And I think that's what they're going to do for this next episode, or whatever episode that is that they're doing.
Nice.
So it does change. I think it changes, but I think it can have a negative and a potentially positive impact. Like you were just touching on that, Sean. The different aspects of that.
It's just another tool as far as I'm concerned, and I think I'm a little bit sympathetic to technology in the sense that I think people sometimes overly fetishize the idea of that, like, this isn't computers, they're shooting it real, and it's like it's all an illusion. It's just kind of like, if you notice it, like famously for the latest Predator movie, there was like a shot released, like a set shot, and people are like, that looks CGI, and they're like, there's no CGI in this imagery, like it's just practical. But people are so like ready to make that criticism, like they're seeing it even when it's not there.
Well, it's gotten harder to tell.
Absolutely.
It really has. But as a technician, this projection screen technology for me is great. We're not out in the weather in the middle of the night, driving around on a car, and I've had it we had a near accident once on a show I was on where somebody broke through a lockup. They went around the cop cars that were stopping and pulled out in front of this, a group of vehicles moving at a certain speed, with people literally sitting out on the outside. So there is some danger to it.
Sure.
And logistically, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time, a lot of we got to put all these cameras and lights on this rig. And the other way, I did another show where we did it the other way with these projection screens, and we were shooting a scene inside a set. We literally went 10, 20 feet away. They got in a car and we shot it out a night driving scene. Cameras on dollies on the ground. It was great.
And what's funny about that to me, I think, is that it's easy for people to say, like, I like practical. Practical's always better than CGI, and they forget that thing that stunt people have their faces degloved when you shoot it real. Like, there's a real human cost to shooting with something on top of a motorcycle, right?
Yeah.
Well, and people have been injured and died. The stunt woman on was it Deadpool? Stunt woman died doing a stunt. There was a stunt man on Walking Dead recently, passed away from a stunt that didn't go well.
On that pleasant note, welcome to episode 37 of Double Primer. We're back with Tanju, and Bret has joined us this week. So,
yeah.
Tanju, did you have something trending since we haven't heard from you in a while?
Yeah. Yes, I was out sick last week. I appreciate you letting me know you're doing the show without me. That was pretty cool.
You sound sarcastic, but
yeah, I did. No,
I think there's a bit of that in there. Yeah,
I had mixed feelings about that. I was on the one hand, I was worried about like, oh, we're missing the show. How are we going to do this? Make this up? And then, as I was sort of toying with the idea of reaching out to you about it, I was like, oh, there's a new episode just dropped. Cool. No, I'm still nursing, getting over it. This thing's dragging on for a week now. But what's trending? I have an interesting little twist on what's trending this week. So, somebody noticed today, This wasn't trending on Twitter when I found it. It was just on my wall as it came up. But I've got it up now, and it's got 2.5 million views. So there's this like kind of parody account that I follow called You Had One Job that kind of makes jokes about like stupid things that you find that are kind of done incorrectly. And it's got a video, I think it was from yesterday, I suspect. Out in California, there's like a house fully engulfed. It looks like a carport, and there's firefighters kind of starting to attack it, and people on the street kind of, looking at it. And this guy comes running up, interrupts the firefighters, and runs into the fire. Did you guys see this at all?
Yes, to get his dog.
You saw that?
Yeah.
So it is trending, right? He's going to get the dog, right? He rescues the dog. And then the interesting thing about it was it wasn't trending on the Twitter trends when I found it, but as I was trying to figure out what was going on, and I think when I first saw this, I was at work, so I didn't have the audio on. So I started looking at some of the comments and the responses, and like halfway down, somebody posted an actual GoFundMe that this family, or someone put up for this family to help them recover from the house fire. Did you guys see that?
I didn't see that part.
And the GoFundMe actually says the campaign is trending. It's got 1,000 likes, and they've raised $30,000 in 2 days, with a lot of people commenting about how they would do anything to save their dogs, right? And the dog really seems to bring the best out in people. So I thought that was pretty interesting that the GoFundMe, which is not a website I normally visit. I have used GoFundMe in the past, but even they have trending as well, campaigns that are trending, and that kind of made me raise an eyebrow. And it makes me wonder what I do. We have a dog. He used to have 2 dogs, and I would love to say I'd go into a flaming house fully engulfed to rescue my dog, but I really don't know if I would. But I can tell you, my wife would definitely go back in. She would be just like that
too.
guy. Yeah. Just like no matter what, she'd be in there.
Unfortunately, I guess a lot of people are going to be mad that I'm going to be a bad person, but yeah, no.
Yeah, I don't know what I don't know what I would do. I think there's part of me that might, and there's part of me that might not. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, probably not.
I thought an interesting meta commentary that came out was that firefighters were kind of weighing in and saying, like, we don't necessarily have to risk anyone's life to go in for the dog. That's understood. But when the owner of the dog went in, that is the time to go in, because you need to save that guy from himself.
You gotta save the guy, right?
Yeah, because very often, someone might run in and get themselves killed. So, that was a potential criticism.
Oh, yeah. That was. Yeah, I saw people criticizing that he's putting the firefighters at risk. But he came out, and I guess it ended up being this sort of no harm, no foul type of situation in the end.
See, I'm the guy who in the movie Alien is yelling at Sigourney Weaver for going back for the stupid cat. I mean, there's a monster in there. You don't go back for the cat, but they do.
Right, which is like the crux of the movie, really, because
it is.
Yeah, because like the whole time Ripley's the one telling them like, we're in quarantine, we can't do this, but then she reveals herself to be as human as everyone else and goes back for the cat.
Yeah, as captain, she said, "No, we're not bringing this on my ship."
Yep. So that's what's trending, I guess. Always a good story there.
Did the GoFundMe look legitimate enough for us to link to it?
Oh yeah, yeah. They 30,000 out of 50,000 raised in 2 days. They have a YouTube video. Looks like People.com did a story about them and getting interviewed. Somebody literally 1 minute ago, I'm living it right out. Obviously donated. Don't say how much they donated. 1 minute over. Jennifer Weinberg. Thank you for saving your dog. That's her comment.
Thank you. Thanks him for saving his own dog.
Thank you for saving your own dog. Which I thought was pretty funny. Yeah, I think it looks legit. It's cool. She donated $20.
We're socially litigating our morality. That like we're saying with our money, like this is what you should do. You should save your dog. Like maybe people aren't thinking of it that way, but in the aggregate, it becomes that way.
They're voting with their dollars. Absolutely, 30,000.
And it shows other people, oh, this is an acceptable behavior, or isn't an acceptable behavior.
Oh yeah, my gosh.
That's a good point. You guys, yeah.
I
I'm going
just
to send you the link right now.
I just found the video, and one of the people that I was working with today apparently had just posted it.
Yeah, see, it is. This was a good one. And yeah,
As I'm
this
searching
morning,
for
I was
it,
like,
popped up,
I
and I
don't
was like,
feel
oh,
good
geez.
today. I was sitting going, I don't feel good, and I have no idea what I'm going to say for what's trending. And then this pops up. It's like, ooh, this one's juicy.
Well, I'm like really into the process of critiquing these like viral images, and a kind of interesting thing that came out in the past was there was a famous image of these two young people at a protest, and they had been shot with like water cannons, and like presumably the young woman had fallen down and the man was like tending to her, and it was this like kind of tender moment, but that like social psychologists were kind of like wondering like why this image over a million other ones, why did this one catch on? And cynically the sort of decision was that it's like she was showing like just enough of her thigh that it like catches people's attention, and then also it has that extra twist of like that it seems like there's like romance to it, so like it hits all these like corners of perception.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like those clickbait things you see all the time, where it's always some bosomy woman, and the article has nothing to do with like that person or.
And as someone that works in TV, they used to say, at least in the up till the 90s, that the most like the thing that made the Nielsen spike the most was a troubled pregnancy. So if you go back to then, like every show had an episode where like someone was having like rushed to the hospital.
Isn't that interesting? When was it? What time period was that?
This was common knowledge when the Nielsen's was still going, so like pre-internet.
Huh.
Well, Nielsen's still around.
Right, but I mean, like, it doesn't mean as much as it used to. Because now they try to...
You'd be surprised.
Well, now they're trying to introduce, like, web views and, like, deciding, like, how far past and stuff like that.
It is more complicated. I mean, because I just, I finished a show, season 1 of a show, and we're hoping to get a second season. And that's one of the factors is, you go look, see, how did it do? And it's so hard to know. So, like, it was getting a 0.9 or whatever, but then it's like, and there's like all these other numbers. I can't even make sense of it. It's so complicated. Because there's the age demographic number, then there's the number of viewers overall, then there's I think they call it a +1, which is like people who watched it the next day. They either recorded it or they went to Hulu. But I can't make, I'm trying to find out, I'm watching it thinking, how's my show doing? Is it going to get another season because I could get more work? I don't know.
You get that shrug emoji. Right?
Shrug emoji. Yeah, I don't know.
I've heard industry people say that now, unlike in the past, if you hold your ratings, that's like growth. Because in the past you wanted to like escalate your viewership, but the entire industry is bleeding numbers every year. So if you hold your numbers, that's like you went up.
Wow.
Well, and if you compare it, I was comparing the base number yesterday, actually, because the season finale was Monday, and I noticed that compared to most like normal like drama type shows, it was like they're all kind of in the similar number. The only things that were bigger were like these stupid reality shows, like Bachelor, and they're like hugely different numbers. I mean, it's massive numbers. It's so weird. And those shows only became a thing because of the writer's strike back in I forget what year that was, where there was a big writer's strike, so scripted shows came to a halt for a while. And so the networks, to keep something on the air, went, okay, we'll get to something where we can't hire writers. And that was when the reality thing sort of took off and became this big thing.
Oh, no.
And now the numbers are so big.
Like a scourge.
It's never going away, man.
I feel like a grumpy old man about reality shows.
Tell me about it.
But then even amongst that, I've heard that it's like they're like the tip of the iceberg on a sinking ship because like in the past, like a good night was like 29 million people, and like now a good night is like 5 million people, and we're talking about like the biggest show, right? Like there was just more to go around because everyone was watching TV all the time, and now like that's dwindling.
Yeah, everything's fragmented all over the place.
And look at how many streaming services are coming online. Oh my gosh, it's insane, and they're all creating content. I mean, I can't complain. I mean, I'm working for Sci-Fi this week. You know, I mean, you know, I'm doing a pilot for the Sci-Fi Network, but I just worked on a show for Amazon. I mean, yeah, Amazon, and then I worked on one for the new Apple streaming service, and one for DC. You know, the DC service.
So do you get checks from those guys that actually say Amazon or whatever?
No,
or do you go through like the production company?
No, payroll companies.
Payroll, huh?
Yeah,
it'd be cool to have a collection of like checks with different names on them.
Well, I do get I get a summary on my W-2s that tell me which shows pay.
That's not the same as a check, though.
Thanks, Tanju.
Now I was thinking like this project I wanted to do. It's like almost too late now, but like when my mom worked in the airline industry back in like the 70s and 80s, like back when like paper tickets were like they looked kind of cool actually, right? And she had a friend that actually they'd travel all over the world, so had all these ticket boarding stubs and whatever, and like put them on a coffee table and like embedded in urethane, so that became like, you ever seen like that?
Yeah,
something like TGI Friday or something, people like bottle caps or whatever.
We did it with beer labels.
Yeah, exactly. But this is with like plane tickets, right? To like your jet setter cred or whatever. So I was thinking like, if you had like check stubs that actually had the name of all these like kind of interesting companies.
No,
that might be kind of cool, but
no, they just say entertainment partners.
I remember when I was in school, that was when like the iPod came out. Do you guys remember that moment? And like that was obviously the precursor before like the smartphones. But if you remember, like the iPhone, it had like that Apple aesthetic where it's basically no buttons protrude. It's just like this. It's just like smooth object that it's an anti-design object. Whereas like everything up to that point in history, if you want to be dramatic about it, well, not just buttons, but that like the shape was defined by its form was defined by its purpose. And all of a sudden, we just now have this box that does things. And so like in the past, like if there was an episode of Mission Impossible, the TV show, and there was an object that did something, you know, if a satellite looked like a satellite. But if you watch the most recent Tom Cruise movies, like they hold up like a box and they're like, this box does this to the network, and then they put it down and you just have to like believe that the box does that. And so I was thinking about how like, you know, now everything is just boxes. We just have like, it's super hyper minimalist and but then like a cat, I like the boxes that the stuff comes in. I always like keep them and I use them for storage. And I heard that that's like an obsession you keep too as well, Bret, right?
I was over here smiling because I was like, so I work in film and TV as a camera assistant. I basically deal with the focus and technical issues with the camera. But to keep myself sane, I've always been tinkering. I'm a tinkerer. And since joining the makerspace, I've sort of explored areas that I didn't even know existed, you know. So I've started getting to be a woodworker, which has been my focus lately, doing a lot of woodworking and learning. And my wife pointed out that I seem to have an obsession with boxes, which I didn't really realize. And she said, yeah, every time we go to like the antique store, you can't pass a box up without picking it up and examining it and opening it and looking how it's made.
Well, you had been making boxes at the space too, I think, before you even mentioned that, right?
Right, yeah. And then I was like making all these boxes, and I thought, oh, maybe I do have a thing about boxes. But you know what's interesting about that is, so I'm thinking, okay, you know, all right, I'll own it. I seem to have this box fetish. I love making boxes. And but it occurred to me actually right after that revelation or that admittance of being, you know, thrust in my face. The guy woodworking for mere mortals, the video cast on YouTube that I watch, he came out with a video about making a simple box and how it's essential as a woodworker to learn to make a basic box, because
you learn all the skills.
Almost everything is made. Almost everything you make is based on a box. And I'm like, oh my gosh. It's like justification, you know. I think about it. Tables, you know, cabinetry, almost any piece of furniture is essentially some sort of box-like object.
boxes are one of the most primal technologies, like in mythology. So everyone knows the term Pandora's box, right?
Yeah. Right.
And so like the sort of cultural touchstone behind that was that boxes as containers were considered like a metaphor for like a life. And like when you drop it and you break it, it loses its purpose. It doesn't contain anymore. So like when Odysseus' wife thinks her husband dies, she drops a container that shatters, and it no longer holds. It's this like metaphor that's like goes back almost as far as story.
Oh, I didn't know that one. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny is even before my wife has previously mentioned that I like boxes, not in the same level, but earlier. And my answer to that always was, yeah, they always seem to hold the promise of something inside.
Yeah, like hope, right? Like hope.
And that was me trying to be funny, but at the same time, it's sort of like I can't pass a box up without opening it to look see what's inside. And what's funny is I mentioned that
nice box is nice.
Well, and I mentioned it to our friend Mike, who's with this Makerspace. He went, "Oh my gosh, I do the same thing." So I'm finding as I ask other friends, "Can you pass up a box without looking inside?" And their answer is usually, "No, I can't. I really can't." So I think there is a universal sort of, I don't know, primal thing about a container, with a lid. Like, what's in here?
So I'm curious too. Like, you made those heart-shaped boxes for that laser cutter class, right? And like that, just that I don't know if you call it a name convention, but like, didn't Nirvana have a song called Heart-Shaped Box?
Oh, I don't know.
Like, it sounds like cliche to me, and I'm like, I don't think Nirvana came up with that term. I think they just borrowed it for their song, but I don't know what the history of that is. But yeah, there's something cool about that. And, man, my little box experience going on right now, literally this week, is so I've managed to get 2 orders for my hangboards, the local, and I've got my website up, and I've been wanting to like start posting on Instagram, like, hey, I've got these things for sale, to like really try to sell them. But then I'm like, if someone wants to order one, I got to ship it. Like, this thing is big and it weighs 8 pounds and it's like a big awkward shape. Like, how the hell am I going to find a box that's because I'm also, other thing I hate, as much as boxes are cool, is when you misuse a box, right? When you get like some giant box from Amazon's the worst at this. It's got some tiny little thing in it. And you're just like, this is so wasteful, right?
Yeah, I ordered some little batteries recently that came like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I got this thing where I'm like, I want to find a box that's not too big, like the Goldilocks box for this thing. It's got this weird aspect ratio, right? It's 30 inches long, but only 2 inches thick. And trying to get some boxes for that is turning into a chore that I haven't quite figured out what I want to do yet. And I don't want to pre-order a whole bunch of boxes at the same time either, and like sink a bunch of money into that where I may not use them.
So you're going to start using that term I talked about, that I posted recently about, I really like to make, but I don't really care for manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's part of it is that the tedium of making the same thing all the time. I make those little 3D printed things that I sell. Actually, my printer would be running, except I didn't want it to be in the background making all that noise.
That would have been cool.
But I've like had this rush of orders for this 3D printed thing I make. And there's a time every now and then I think, oh gosh, I have to make more of those. I mean, I make money on them, but at the same time, it's like, oh, I have to make more. Oh, I got to change to blue filament. Oh man, and they're not as, is it a guy thing about like we like to be just done with something? Like for me, what is the juice is, hey, I wonder if I could make that. Oh, cool. I wonder if I could make a thing. I could solve this problem, which is how this product came out. I was solving a problem. Mm-hmm. Somebody said, hey, I really need a thing for this to hold this way, and I wish there was something out there. And I thought, I bet I could figure that out. And, over the course of a couple of weeks of tinkering around, I came up with something, and it worked pretty well. I said, oh, that'd be great. And then they've evolved, and now I make them all the time. But
the fun part, into drudgery a little bit.
Well, a little, but because the fun part's over.
Yep.
So it's that, and You know, a friend of mine actually said this to me a while back when we were discussing making something. He goes, "Yeah, you're kind of an 80% guy." So I'm like, "What do you mean by that?" He goes, "Yeah, you get really into it, and you get all the way to the point where you realize you could definitely do it. You could definitely master this technique or this technology, like be it welding or woodworking, whatever. You know, like, okay, yeah, I definitely know I can make this. You know, and I've built 2, and now the next one's going to be perfect. And then I don't go the rest of the way because I know I could do it."
I don't know if you were being rhetorical, but I've got some good evidence that it might not just be men. It might not be a man thing, because there's this
human thing.
There's a author named Dorothy Parker who had this famous quote that she said, "I don't like writing, I like having written," which is something I think we can all relate to. And just for a cultural touchdown, she's the one who wrote the original A Star Is Born. So, to have like a contemporary connection, yeah.
She wrote that?
Yeah, in 1937 she wrote the screenplay.
Isn't she the one that wrote the thing about horticulture? When challenged to use the word horticulture in a sentence?
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, Algonquin Round Table, I believe.
Right.
One of this.
Yeah, that's the right lady.
And her answer was lead a horticulture, but you can't make her drink.
Oh, so you were talking about the issues of packaging and shipping, Tanju?
Yeah.
That's kind of, for me, that interesting thing that boxes are also like this symbol of modernity. That especially like if you grew up at a certain time, you remember like the idea of like the mail away kits and that like the Acme box. Like that.
Well, I didn't get that. I did get the CDs from BMG Music and whatever the other music servers where I'd get up 30 CDs at a time or whatever. That was awesome.
Absolutely.
Back now.
But like that was almost a uniquely American experience when people used to like Sears catalogs were a thing, like before Amazon. Like the idea that you're in a small town and wherever, and you can mail away for this box that brings to you civilization, essentially.
Right.
You could actually order from the Sears catalog a house.
Yeah,
a house,
and have it mailed to you.
Yeah, and they would deliver it, and you would assemble it, and some of those houses stand today. I saw a thing recently about that on Facebook, where some of those Sears catalog houses, you know, and they, at the time were remote places. You would order this house, it would come on a train, they would unload it, and you would assemble it, and you have a house.
Wow.
And some of those houses to this day are still standing.
I wonder how long before Amazon's selling houses then.
Yeah, they sell everything else.
Unfortunately, Amazon's probably going to be selling you the slave quarters in their like slave city. They'll skip that middleman.
Somebody's been watching Ready Player One.
But that is an exciting like aspect of boxes, right? That they look so perfect on the outside, and then they've got this like promise inside, and in shipping the case goods, that's the biggest obstacle. Like as an engineer, I'm sure you face this all the time, that it's like that like weight to like profit ratio, that it's like at some point there's going to be some distance where you mailing this thing is going to cost more than making it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think about it every time I see one of those little houses on a trailer going, how is that possible? It's worth moving.
Right.
I'm sure you've seen those. It's like, is that really worth, how much is that to move a house? But they do it, you know. But I don't know, man, the whole box thing was just one of those sort of funny revelations of, I don't know, it seems almost universal in a weird way, you know. I think the Pandora box thing you made, and the Odysseus, I didn't know that one.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking out for that. I wonder if people still use it and it's just very subtle, like TVs and movies. Never picked up on that.
Well, the Pandora's box is a classic. I mean, you know, it's been referenced in so many direct and indirect ways of, you know, it contains, you know, it's the unknown. And then there's Schrodinger's box with a cat, you know, and the observation, you know, sets the state of, you know, quantum mechanics. But, you know,
if you believe in like Joseph Campbell's teachings, it's that whether you realize you're noticing the reference or not, it's like it's in our DNA essentially, right?
Sure. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Wow, Joseph Campbell. Wow.
Yeah, actually, never heard that.
Didn't expect that
I
one.
have no idea who that is.
Yeah, well, basically, he's been kind of repopularized by like the screenwriting community because, like there was this famous book called like "Save the Cat" to tie it back together. Was basically saying like, you know, there are these kind of archetypes in our human storytelling that if you have them, it feels satisfying, and if you don't have them, you're kind of are missing something. So like the "Save the Cat" thing is that early on in a movie, you want to have the protagonist like save a cat from getting run over or something, and so the audience knows, oh, this is a good guy. We should be rooting for him. And like, so the it's sort of like the kind of bastardized version of Campbell's theory, which is the hero with 1,000 faces. That he has like these. The two big things are that there are only two stories in the world: a hero comes to town and going on a journey. And that like you do these archetypes that like across cultures that we kind of share, you know, like so anthropologists have like excitedly uncovered that like multiple civilizations have had like, you know, the essentially a gun sun god, or you know, like these things that like are
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah.
To look into that a little more. Always learning something new on this podcast.
well
Maybe Sean does his research.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes deep.
maybe you guys forgot, but like both of you guys are like box people in terms of when I met you. So like Tanju, like you brought in like a Cuban cigar box with like it had all like your little pieces in it. Do you remember that? Showing me your. Like,
oh yeah, no, I was stoked. I found that thing at Goodwill. I was so excited. I was like, this is a quality made box, right? It was wood with dovetail joints. Yeah, and I've got all my my stamping material.
Sorry, wait, I'm enjoying this moment really. I think you just made my point.
The only problem was the clasp is broken, right? It's missing a clasp, so I've got it right now with rubber bands keeping it closed. But no, yeah, I'm still using it because that's where I keep my stamp material for my artisan hangboard logo, right? That I stamp. That thing works awesome too. It literally takes me 2 minutes to stamp a board now. And that box is just the right, you know, sort of just got just the right amount of, it's small enough, it fits in my backpack, it just keeps exactly what I need for it.
Yeah, Tanju's very much about repurposing and reusing. He's really, his 3D printer, the his power supply electronics are in a box that was, a cell phone box?
Oh, yeah, that was my Samsung. Yeah. Cell phone boxes are well-made boxes too, actually. I don't want to throw those away.
And see, I was like, why don't you 3D print a new, yes, because he was so proud of that box.
I actually have the box bolted onto the frame.
He's very proud of that cardboard box that holds the electronics.
It's like a nice white box. It's probably a fire hazard if I ever overheat the damn thing, but...
I would be like, no, I need something nicer.
It's held up for 4 years.
So, like, and Bret, like, to get specific, one of the first projects I saw you firsthand making, if not the first, was you were making these music boxes, like these Harry Potter music boxes, right?
Which I still don't have right.
Yeah.
There's one right here on my desk. There's one right in front of me right now that doesn't really work right, and I had to make legs. Hang on.
Oh, you can hear it, yeah.
Let's listen to that.
So, like, you mentioned that's right there in my desk.
It's funny to think that, like, a psychologist would say that it's like you have a desire to make a box, and then, like, the music part is just like an excuse, right? That it's it lets me make boxes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for me, I don't know, man. The whole making thing, you know, it's so. When I was a kid, you know, we were pretty poor. We didn't have a lot of disposable income, and I so desperately wanted to make some things. And I remember the Radio Shack at the time made these electronic kits, and I remember saving my penny's allowance and mowing lawn money and everything to buy these little electronic kits. And they rarely worked when I got them done. And I had no recourse. I didn't know anybody who could tell me what I did wrong. What did I solder wrong? Or, why isn't this working? And I got very frustrated and kind of gave it up, which was pretty common to a lot of my pursuits when I was younger. I remember taking drawing class and got frustrated. I remember taking guitar lessons and getting frustrated. And I think today the accessibility that we have to things and to people and to knowledge is astonishing.
Yeah,
when you think about, I mean, well, like, I think a couple people at the Makerspace have referred to me as like, oh yeah, Brett's like the woodworking guy. You need to talk to him. He knows about the table saw, the bandsaw. And there's some truth to that, but at the same time, I mean, I just now learned that. Mm-hmm. And I learned it because that information is readily available. You know, I mean, I had to seek it out, but at the same time, it's so satisfying to that need I think I've always had of like wanting to make or build things that now, you know, we have Arduinos and Raspberry Pis, and so much information and technology, and like the Raspberry Pi, you know, it's an amazing little computer, but without the community that's behind something like that, with all these libraries, if I want to hook up a servo motor to my Raspberry Pi, I don't have to know how. I don't know how, you know, I don't have to like discover like this deep core programming knowledge. I download a library that lets me do something simple to access that.
Well, you got to just know where to look, and I think some of the Raspberry Pi competitors, like Intel, tried to make a board, right?
And that's where they failed.
But they failed because they didn't have that community behind them.
I have a whole box of those kinds of things over here behind me, of other boards that I don't use because they don't have that. I'd have to learn how to do this or learn how to do that. Or, I mean, right now there's a Arduino on my desk right in front of me here with a servo attached. That's the beginnings of a rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock game. You know, it's a totally dumb, like goofy toy that I want to make, but I've been wanting to make it for a long time, and I'm very proud of the fact that I figured out how to program it. But when it came down to it, I didn't have to learn how to send pulses to a servo to go to a position. You know, all I had to learn was how to write the simple line of code that sets a number that means a position.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That kind of accessibility is just it's staggering, really.
Yeah, it's a good time to be alive right now.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah, that was fun.
Brett, you touched on something at the very start of that I reacted to, which was you were saying that like you started off with maybe not that much money, but you had this will to make, and the choice is problem solving, and however it gets solved is however it gets solved. So like for me, in a practical way, and relates to maybe your obsession too, is that I would buy pizzas and they come in this box, and I'd have this anxiety that like this is a nice box still, and it's like a single serve use, right? That it's like you take it home, eat the pizza, and I have this box that is big and it has this nice flat surface. So I would paint like the box and like prime it so that it like held its shape, and like I paint on them, and like they're sturdy, and you hang them up with like 3 push pins, and they can last forever.
That's why Tanju's your friend right there. Right there.
Absolutely. You should have seen the first time I saw him walking to the art station with a box. I thought it was a box of pizza. It turned out it was one of his projects. But I want to ask you. Might as well ask you now on the air or whatever recording. Was how much do you normally sell one of your pizza box paintings for? Like, is there a price range?
Yeah, so like unless it's like I've been specifically asked, like with a price tier for the show, I charge it like $50, and that's kind of like I'm courting this audience of like kind of non-collectors, where like you'll have this thing sort of like the hangboards maybe, where it's like people that they're not necessarily art collectors, but they're like, but they know what they like.
Appreciate,
per se,
they just appreciate something nice. Yeah,
I don't know if it's art, but I know what I like.
I like it. No, yeah, I think there's someone I'm thinking about getting a gift for that I think a pizza box painting might be a good fit for. So, so I was trying to get a sense.
Similar thought about my wife might like one. So look, so this podcast is a good thing.
Yeah, commercial.
I don't know. It mentions my wife's a painter and a quilter and a sew. She sews. She taught sewing, and we bought some art. I remember we went to like a craft art show thing, and interestingly, we both had commented on. I said, "Oh yeah, I saw this young artist, this young girl who'd painted some portraits. They were beautiful. We should buy one to support her." And my wife said, "Oh, I saw her. I absolutely love one of her paintings. I want to go buy it. I said, oh, great, because I loved a lot of her stuff. Go buy one. And so my wife goes, she picks a painting, comes back, and I'm like, wow, you bought that one? It was, yeah, about half the paintings in my upstairs, I think, are my wife's. About half.
Wow.
I remember coming across a sketchbook of hers, and I thought, wow, these are really nice. And she was a very typical response to people. You know, it's like, oh, I'm terrible. I'm not good at that. And I'm thinking, these are really nice. And, you know, we've been married a long time now. And over the years, I hope, I'd like to think that I helped encourage her to explore that. She got really good friends with a couple of painters, one of which was actually the president of like the Atlanta Portrait Society, you know, until very recently. And she started taking classes, and honestly, I think she's a very good painter. She's very much into what they call plain art now, where you go out and paint in nature. And actually, it was fun. She's now asking me to make things for her, which is really cool. I love that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I made her an easel.
Wow. Maybe I could trade you an easel for a painting.
You want a plain art easel? I'll make you one. I do. I just figured out how to make one because
on plein air, the style of painting outdoors. It was it was motivated by a container. So around 1860, they found out how to use aluminum and hammer it into like these useful sheets so they can make these tubes. So what used to restrict you to a studio where you'd have to like grind your pigments and stuff and be like at a table, they could put the pigments in the oil paint in these containers and go outside.
Oh wow.
There you go.
Yeah, so yeah, she saw like a video somewhere where somebody made where they use a tripod and you build this little sliding doohickey out of wood and it holds your canvas, and then take two picture frames, pre-made wooden frames, and you turn them into a pallet that opens up with hinges. And she asked me, said, "Do you think you could make that?" I was like, "Yeah, I could probably do that." And it turned into this project. So it's a pallet made out of two, like we bought it at the art store, like wooden painting frames. You know, like it's a little like half box, if you will. You cut one in half, you put hinges on it, and then it hooks on your tripod, and then it's just a piece of wood with a slot and sliding knobs and two things to hold a canvas. It was so fun because to be asked to make something for someone you love like that, her asking me to do it actually felt great. To actually accomplish it was amazing.
The easel industry is such a weird prosumer, like that you can go to Michael's and get an easel and it's not good, but like the price jumps to like $300, $600, $1,000 for like much higher quality. So like the fact that you could hand make her one means she's going to get essentially probably the best one she could possibly have.
Right.
I'm pretty pleased with it. I think it turned out well. I mean, I went to the woodworking store and found these threaded knobs and bought a bolt, and I cut some wood and on the table saw and figured out how to make them slide and embedded this thread. And for me, it was fun about learning how to do it.
We could theory craft this. I had this idea for an art project maybe we could all collaborate on. If we took a series of boxes, almost like, Russian nesting dolls, where like you open it up and there's a smaller one inside. Mm-hmm. Have you seen those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I thought it'd be a fun project if we took like, you start with a box, like maybe it's a beat up cardboard box, right? And then inside that's a wicker box. And inside that's maybe a plywood box, and then each layer inside gets to be like a little nicer of a box until maybe like you have like a thimble-sized box made of gold or something. So that's like that mystery of that, like what's in that box, and like each one is a bet, like it's like the generations, because like the premise of the Russian nesting dolls is supposed to allude to the generations of like the grandmother, the grandfather, or the great grandfather, etc. So like that would be like that kind of imagery that like we could just
artistically. I love that idea.
Increasingly nicer boxes as you go in.
And one of the first thing I thought of, because like I said, I told you guys beforehand, I had just talked with my youngest daughter, and she was excited about some developments in her career in school. as a parent, that's one of those things that I think every parent goes through is that, you want to be that outside box of that nesting box. There's nothing more satisfying to see them growing into something greater and better than you ever were. You want to give them the benefit of all your life experience, so they can start from.
You can just build on top of it.
They can build from. Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, Tanju. Yeah, so my kids never knew the kind of poverty that I knew as a kid. And we're all pushing them to do more than we ever did, and to reach higher, to go further. My youngest daughter's decided to be a teacher, and she just found out she's going to get to do student teaching this semester, and she is so excited. It's amazing how excited that girl got about that simple thing, because she wants to have an impact.
Right.
She wants to influence. She wants to encourage. Tanju, you do this. That's why you're part of a makerspace. That's why you built a makerspace. It's about having a makerspace. Isn't about us just having access to the tools we wanted. It's about encouraging other people to reach their potential, to have opportunities.
Well, just to have opportunities and access to that, for sure.
I was going to say that, I shared that Greek myth of the box. Well, there's an Eastern Zen koan where, that basically kind of says, essentially, what does someone who is a maker and makes his masterpiece, the best work he can make, what does he make next?
Student.
Exactly, yeah. So, the idea is that you make a child, and they are going to make something that you couldn't, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a kind of really universal idea, is that, you got to make the next maker.
The idea of an art project as nesting boxes, that itself was I don't know, it's kind of interactive. But what if we were able to do an art show that was just boxes?
Yeah.
Where you get to walk through the building or the room, and there's, a dozen different boxes of different styles and different levels. And maybe a nesting box could be one of them there.
Sure.
But you could have other, right?
And if you somehow plan it out that the overall box step somehow is in sync with the nesting box, you make the two somehow the same, so that once you get to the end and then you get to the nesting box as the last thing, you realize that you would go through the nesting box that it's the same thing you just walked through.
Okay, that'd be a good twist.
Yeah, that would be. It's almost like an escape room setup or something.
Mm-hmm.
Or you guys make boxes, and then I'll have a video playing on the TV screen showing the unboxing of the boxes.
Well, and when we transport this stuff to the art venue, we got to put it in a box. So.
Yep.
The truck's a box.
Yeah, there you go. See, like Woodworking for Mere Mortals said, everything's basically a box.
Yep.
Well, Sean, I do like that idea. I'm game. I don't know about that. Who's going to make the gold box at the end, though? I don't know. Mike Ross. We'll get Mike in on that. He's the ultimate. Our friend Mike, I don't think he knows it, but he's the ultimate maker.
But yeah, I'm afraid I'm gonna have to kind of end it today. Yeah, I'm gonna have to call it. We'll have to save the inspiration topic for next week. That's all right.
Well, I'm always happy to come on, guys. I enjoy this immensely.
Awesome.
And and I've probably added to our listenership by a factor of I don't know, 2 or 3 people.
2? I haven't checked iTunes, but is there any comments? There's none on Podbean, but I know that's kind of a more obscure platform that I use.
Indulge me for just 1 minute. What I fixed this week is a little inside baseball about iTunes, because there's this thing going on right now where iTunes, I was just kind of grousing about how they're anti-design or whatever. On their iTunes model, they sent out this kind of snippy email saying that if you put your title and your episode number in your titles, you might get delisted. Because they don't like that. It's gross to see like double primer
Extra number?
and then double primer 30 or whatever. And I like it as like a programming thing of like if you downloaded it and it's not a part of like an app that you'd be able to recognize it or whatever.
Absolutely.
So a week later, so I was like, all right, I'll compromise and I'll just put the number and I won't put the title again. Hopefully that'll keep me from getting delisted. And I guess there was a lot of backlash because they sent out another email saying like, okay, we're not going to delist you, but we prefer if you didn't do this.
Wow.
So if you noticed on your app how like all of them say double primer until like last week where it says just like 36 in the title, that was the change. Yeah. Podbean does too.
Check out.
Okay.
You guys can definitely stay on as long as you want, though. But I am curious about this, but I got to run.
All right, bye, Tanju.
Good night, Tanju.
Yep.
Find more information at doubleprimer.com.